The voice of the Boston Bruins, Judd Sirott, brought to you by Sports Etc., Boston's best hockey shop, powered by Bauer, with the best selection of Bauer skates, sticks, and goalie equipment at 1303 Mass Ave in Arlington or online at sportsetc.net. Good morning. How are you?
Morning. What's going on?
Emotional night on Tuesday night at the Garden.
I thought the Bruins as an organization nailed it. I think what you wanted to see is when Brad Marchand came back, you wanted to honor his time here in Boston. He's an iconic player. 63 is going to be hanging from the rafters. And the video that they put together, and I think he mentioned it once he saw the faces of his kids, in addition to all the accomplishments that he had here with the Bruins, I think it got him. And I loved how sincere he was. I loved the honesty. All of his interviews were absolute gold.
Yeah.
Before, during, and after the game. But I thought it was a great moment.
After when he spoke to ESPN and talked about the way in which things ended here, I gave him a lot of credit for putting a lot of that on himself and saying that he got too emotional at that time with regard to that negotiation, and so it's unfortunate that they couldn't figure that out, team and player, but also he seems pretty happy where he is now and the opportunity to win down there.
Oh, he's in a great spot. I don't think that there was any team other than maybe the Florida Panthers that was going to give him a 6-year deal, and that's what they gave to a 37-year-old guy. And listen, hats off to him. I saw the piece that I think you're talking to where he talked about, do you think or do you have any regrets with the way that everything unfolded at this point? And I think to his point, he said, maybe I could have handled things a little bit differently. I think the Bruins, they wanted to keep him, but I don't think that they were willing to meet Marchand's number.
No. That game should have been on NESN, by the way. You probably
You're preaching to the choir, baby.
You would probably agree. I mean,
yes.
Yeah.
Would have been so much
at
better.
least here locally. I think one of the things, and I don't, understand all the ins and outs of how the networks can take games and what they can choose to use. But there are times where the local market can take the game and then everybody else nationally could get ESPN or TNT.
Oh, okay.
We had that instance last year. We were in Minnesota, where our game was broadcast back in Boston here on NESN, but everybody else got the Wild and the Bruins. You certainly wish, and I understand, if you're a network, this is why you pay all that money in the rights fee to be able to get that opportunity to see this moment. It was a huge game, sir. Certainly here early in the season, especially at a time before the World Series had started. But, if you wanted the right broadcast, you wanted NESN to be able to do it.
They do that with the Celtics often, where the Celtics will be maybe on ESPN, but you can still watch them on the local broadcast, Scalabrini, and I forget what the other guy's name is.
I said this earlier during Scheim's lead. Is it, and I hate even saying it out loud, but is it possible that they're paying the wrong guy $8 million to be their goaltender?
No.
No?
No, I think Swayman's gotten off to a good start. So if you look in the big picture as far as, the way the goaltending has played here early in the season, I think both Jeremy Swayman and Jonas Korpisalo are off to really good starts. I would expect that Jonas Korpisalo will get the start here tonight. You're playing on Saturday afternoon against the Colorado Avalanche, a team that Swayman gave you an opportunity to stay in that game and win. It was 2-1 heading into the third period. I would imagine that Swayman's going to get that start. So I think he has been as advertised. I think the issue, Greg, so if we look at the big picture, all right, Bruins won the first 3, lost the next 5, but as far as offense and defense, if you look at the offense right now, it's actually in the middle of the pack in the league. That's fine. But the defense is in the bottom third, and that's not where you need to be. This team has said if we're going to be competitive, we need to play to our identity. Stingy, hard to play against, not stingy enough.
But to say that they're off to a good start, like they have 3 wins, but they're against teams that aren't that great. So it's for me, when you look at a guy like Jeremy Swayman and how much we're paying him, and we go back to 2 seasons ago when he was lights out, and then the offseason he had last, you would just hope that he would get off to a much better start, in my opinion, than just getting 3 wins against some crappy teams.
I think some of the issues, Courtney, with the goals that have been allowed in front of whether it's Jeremy Swayman or Jonas Korpisalo and listening to the players and the coaches, they're too easy. They're tap-ins, they're backdoor plays, they're easily correctable plays that just simply cannot happen. I think, if you look at what's happening with the goals against, more of it is happening because of what's happening in front of those goalies than the goaltenders themselves.
Right.
I mean,
in most cases, it's Mason Lohrei.
I mean, if you guys, no. If
You
you
are
guys
a
have watched
hater
the
on
game,
him, no.
I think, when everybody's watching a game and a goal goes in, how many head scratchers have you had? Like, oh, he really should have had that. I don't think that there are many that you can point to with a lot of the goals that have happened. But I think some of the issues are with game management. All right, let's take the Florida game, for example. You battled back 2-0 down heading into the third period against the defending Stanley Cup champions. You tied at 2. Then you go down 3-2, tied again at 3-3. So you've got just more than a minute left at that point. So how do you manage the puck? How do you manage the game? They didn't manage it properly, and because of that, they lost.
And I think, Judd, when I look at this team, and I think Swayman and Korpisalo are doing a good job, but you can't ask them to put up Vezina-like performances night in and night out when they're paying they're paying good money to Swayman, but they're paying their defense, whether it's Zadorov, whether it's McAvoy, they're paying their defense some good money, and I think that's where you're kind of
money. Yeah, McAvoy's making over $9 million a year.
You're falling short. Lindholm makes good money. Like, you're actually falling short on where I thought your defense would be better than your offense, because if you just look at
that's what Marco Sturm thought also.
I think that's part of it. Hopefully Hampus Lindholm is back on the ice. I think, we didn't do the game obviously on Tuesday, but Hampus took a full morning skate. I think a lot of people expected, he's going to step back into the lineup and play. He didn't. He's a difference maker for you on the back end when he's in. But I think, to get back to, it's not just the defense, but getting back to game management. What are you doing with the puck when you have it? That was one of the things that Brick wanted to focus on when the Bruins were playing the game in Utah. And I think the Florida game is a perfect example. So just over a minute left. This is something that Marco Sturm talked about. Why what are you doing with the puck in the offensive zone or on the offensive side of the ice? And I think the Bruins didn't value it, and because of that, Florida had a chance to come back and tie that and win that game.
What are people saying about Hampus behind the scenes? Because for him to get back in the lineup on Saturday, after he said he had a lot to build upon, obviously, he wasn't sure if he was going to get back in the lineup on Sunday, but then Tuesday as well. That's a worry for me.
I haven't heard anything necessarily, Courtney. I think that all of us, I think I was a little bit surprised he didn't play on Tuesday. I could understand why he wasn't playing in a back-to-back game.
Right.
Playing Saturday in Colorado was actually a quicker turn, so the Bruins played 7 o'clock Mountain Time in Denver, and then you got to turn around, travel, and play at 5 o'clock Mountain
100%.
Time in Salt Lake. So I don't think anybody, and this is, it sounds like it's a lower body, it's some sort of soft tissue injury. So I don't think anybody was necessarily surprised that he didn't play on Sunday, but I think it raised an eyebrow that he didn't play on Tuesday. That doesn't mean that he's not hurt or unable to go, but he apparently didn't feel right. You got a long season, when you want to make sure that whatever he has doesn't get worse.
It just concerns me. Like, Chauncey Billups just took the under on 30 wins.
Oh, dear.
Which is of concern.
Chauncey Billups.
How do you look at an area as special teams, right? We always talk about special teams. We talk about the power play. And
how many questions does Chauncey have Wiggy asking?
Hey, listen, Chauncey was a good player when he was here.
Is there a parlay available?
Yeah, I don't know. But when you think about the Bruins and their power play,
I got the over on him being out of the Hall of Fame at 15 days, Curtis.
I thought you were going to say word count for Wings.
No.
Carry on.
No. To go back to the special teams and power play.
He'll be able to join us when we do the Springfield Road Show. Can
I ask my question here?
Outside.
Are we going to talk Chauncey Billups and his gambling problems that he's having? Come on, Chauncey. What do they need to do better? Power play opportunities for them to make sure. Do they mess with the lines a little bit?
No, I don't think it's a function of personnel, Wiggy. I think they're just not moving the puck fast enough. A power play is not going to score every time, but I think what you want to be able to do is a power play is a great opportunity to either grab momentum or further momentum that you have. And obviously, the goal is to score, but you're not going to be able to do that every time. But I think the Bruins' issues too often are they're either too slow to move the puck or they have a hard time moving the puck consistently. The power play early on, what's funny is we talk about, all right, they're 3-5 here to start the season. They've been in every single game. Every single game, they've had an opportunity to win those games. Even in the Vegas game, they battled back from 6-3. It's 6-5. It was 6-5 early in the third period. But the power play, to your point, has had opportunities to make a difference, and it's only done that, it's done that sparingly here early in the season. It can certainly be better. It needs to be better for this team to be competitive.
If you look at the next 3 games, though, you look at the Ducks, Avalanche, and Senators, those should be 2 winnable games. The Avalanche will be hard, but the other 2 games should be winnable. In your mind, what do they need to do in these 3 games to show that they are an okay hockey team this season?
Well, I think one of the things is that they have to come out with a better start, and there has to be a little bit more desperation. We've seen the Bruins score first early on, but unfortunately they've given some of those leads back. I go back to the last game we did in Salt Lake City against the Utah Mammoth. In that game, the Bruins came out. I understand it was a back-to-back game, didn't come out as strong as they would like, but the desperation that you saw at the end of that game, the desperation you saw at the end of the game in Florida, I think you want to see that a little bit more earlier in the game and carry that as much as possible. I don't think there's any team, everybody talks about, we're going to play a 60-minute game. Not going to happen, okay? There are going to be times where the other team is going to push, or maybe there's a mistake or a little bit of a letdown, but you want to be able to try and I think if you can seize that opportunity a little bit earlier in the game, like against a team like the Ducks, I think that will certainly help. I think in the bigger picture, if you look at where the Bruins are in the schedule, and this was always going to be a tough month. I want to say they're in a span where they play 5 of 6 on home ice. This is where you got to stay in the mix, and this is where they got to cash in. It doesn't matter who the opponent is.
Judd, this organization has only gotten 79 games out of draft picks since 2021. None of those draft picks are on the roster currently. How much of an impact does that have on kind of the overall talent level and success of this team?
Well, I don't know exactly the numbers you're looking at. I think the other thing you have to look at is the Bruins also haven't had an opportunity, like a lot of teams that were in their position for a long time, to draft a lot of players. Let's take the Ducks, for example. This is a team that was completely torn down and then built back up. If you happen to watch or go to the game tonight, you're going to see a lot of really good young talent. The Bruins are built differently. They're in a different spot than a team like Anaheim. This was a spot that Anaheim was in maybe about 10 years ago when they were competing for a Stanley Cup championship. But I think to your point, whether it's draft picks or anybody else that you have in your organization or in your system, you need to have that push. Everybody needs to be pushed in order to be better. I think that the Bruins felt as an organization they didn't have that last year, and it cost them.
Okay. Well,
no, I was just going to say, because I always try to figure out the world of every different sport and the uniqueness of it. And a lot of times when we talk about draft picks, and, we talked to Milbury last year, and it seems like draft pick type players generally take maybe 2, 3, 4 years before you get a return on that type of investment. Is that like something that we look at when it comes to some of these Bruins players? I believe it's what Patra was the second round draft pick.
It was a second round pick. And this was a kid, if you want to go back to a guy like Matt Patra, he's surprised in training camp. He earned the opportunity to play in the National Hockey League that year because of the crazy rules that exist in the NHL. They weren't allowed to send him to the American Hockey League. If they sent him down, he would have to go back to junior and play. And, at that point, he had dominated junior. So I don't know how much of an advantage it would have been. But, to your point, I think, when it comes to most picks around the National Hockey League, save guys who are top 10 picks, they're going to need time in the American Hockey League. I think one of the things, whether it's Brick or my old partner Bobby Beers, those guys would talk about all the time, having that opportunity you need to learn in the American Hockey League before you're ready for National Hockey League games. I know you brought up Mason Lohrei.
Yeah.
He didn't spend a whole lot of time in the American Hockey League. And I think when it comes to defense, the hardest position for years in the NHL to learn at that level is D.
Has he played defense before at all in his hockey career?
He has.
He has. Okay.
He was not originally a defenseman, if that's where you're going to. So before he played college hockey, he was not always a defenseman.
Yeah.
He played forward when he was at Culver. Before he went to Ohio State, So he's a guy who's still learning how to play D, and
learning on the job.
Absolutely,
Why not?
and
Good.
obviously the learning curve at the National Hockey League level,
Okay.
even harder.
Text for you, Judd, on the Subaru of New England text line, and this one is from Terry R. in Orlando. Has 12-leg Ducks parlay tonight. Wondering if you would take a look at that and give him some advice.
I'll
Can't use the
take a
phone
look.
right now, but he has a phone call available coming up at 11.
All right.
Okay.